which is a man-made substitute for a diamond. I lost close to 30,000 on that, but it was a lesson learned.
Hey, before we get into the video, be sure to enter our brand new giveaway. We'll be giving away any of these items. It's your choice. To enter the giveaway, leave a like, comment the keyword, subscribe, turn on notifications, and most importantly, watch the whole video. It's that simple.
8 times Chumlee scammed the customers. Hailing by way of fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, the Pawn Stars of the world-famous gold and silver pawn shop are not shy of haggling a bargain that will later benefit themselves. The star of the show, actor and businessman Chumlee, is one particular member of staff that doesn't mind scamming the customers in order to find himself a good deal. 8. Air Jordan 5s. Working in customer service is one of those jobs that requires a whole lot of patience and the ability to digest stupidity at an exceptional rate, and working in a broker shop is no exception. Chumlee realizes that one customer he is dealing with really had no clue what he had brought into the store. Even though he was ready to trade for what he thinks was going to be a relatively decent price, the customer really had no gauge on the worth of this item. Acknowledging that this guy has next to no idea about the Air Jordan 5s that he brings in, Chumlee decides this is a good opportunity to take the guy for a ride. Men might not typically have the best eyes for shoes, especially the branded kind, but this seller missed a trick by not researching the brand before he brought them to the store. I mean, come on, they're classic Air Jordans. The customer ends up selling the shoes for a mere $75, when in reality, they sold for over $170 retail. Chum really knew what he was doing with this one and got himself a sweet deal that definitely ended up paying off in the end. Know your shoes if you're gonna sell them, man. 7. Signed Spider-Man comic art. God rest his soul, Stan Lee was the genius that practically invented the superhero genre and made comic books a staple part of popular fiction. His work means he will hold a legacy that will live on for a very long time. Prior to his death in late 2018, though, Stan made an unexpected cameo that helped Chumlee bag a sweet bargain. When a customer brought in a retro Amazing Spider-Man comic art strip, Chumlee is surprised to find the signature of both Stan Lee and Jim Romita, the original founders of the legendary character. While this piece would fit better in Kevin Smith's show, Comic Book Man, this customer brought the piece to the gold and silver pawn store to try his hand at getting a good deal. Chumlee is no fool, however, he had to get the signatures validated by an expert, so he takes the strip to a very special guest to prove its authenticity. The customer originally wanted $10,000 for the art, which is a relatively understandable price given what it is, but it wouldn't be Chumlee if he didn't barter the price down. Chum managed to swindle the piece for a cool $5,000 while in the queue to meet the comic book expert, and then revealed his source to be Stan Lee himself. We can't even begin to imagine what the piece would be worth today, and the customer is probably kicking himself for letting it go so easily. However, he got to meet the legend that was Stan Lee, and that's worth the money itself. 6. US Open themed Les Paul guitar. Sometimes beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and this was definitely the case when a customer brought in a Gibson Les Paul adorned with images from the US Open. That's right, a guitar worthy of the greatest rock stars of all time plastered with the faces of tennis greats, mid-bat. It's just gross in every way imaginable. Oh, so gross. What's the only thing cooler than rocking out on a guitar? Rocking out on a guitar that advertises your favorite sport. The guy bringing this beauty in for sale wanted 5,000 whole American dollars, but Chum talked him down to $3,500 because there was clearly a big question mark as to whether Chum would be able to shift the instrument. Rick and the others weren't so confident this one was a profitable investment and completely ripped into Chumlee for even considering that it could be. Les Paul is one of Gibson's most famous guitar models, however, so Chum thought he'd be onto a winner either way. Chum was wrong. So, in actual fact, he scammed himself on this one. Guitar expert Jesse Amoroso revealed that they wouldn't be able to shift the instrument without it costing them $1 or $2, as no one would actively seek a guitar adorned with tennis legends. In the city where Lady Luck reigns supreme, Chum did not get lucky this time around. 5. Super Mario statue. It's a me, Mario! This next item is almost as bad as our impression of the video game star. no matter how much of a Nintendo fan you are, there's very limited room for a giant Super Mario statue in general adult life, and this one seller has finally come to that realization. Sadly, Caesar loves the statue because it reminds him of his childhood, as it probably does most people, but we'll bet most people don't have giant statues to commemorate their childhood loves. When Caesar walks into your store with his friend carrying the incredible heavy version of Super Mario, you know you're in for an interesting day. Chumlee is an expert in the field of video games and all things retro, but wasn't sure how much he could resell the item for and to what use it could be repurposed for. Unless another Super Mario fan wandered into the store, this item would end up being hard to move. Literally. Caesar wanted $1,000 for the thing, but Chumlee clearly pointed out they needed to make money on it and it wasn't going to sell for that amount to begin with. But due to the bizarre nature of the item and the fact that it was covered in scratches and damage, Chumlee managed to snag it for $550, knowing that it would probably be an easy sell to anyone wanting to create a retro theater gaming room. While not the worst scam, we still think Chum was happy to pay the money just to have Mario standing in the store. It's a win-win situation in the end. 4. Babe Ruth Baseball Mitt. Sports memorabilia can be some of the most sought-after collectibles and can sell for astronomical prices when people are trying to compete their collections. Baseball is one of America's best-loved sports, and signed items are something that any true baseball fan prides themselves on. Babe Ruth was one of the greatest baseball players of all time, so when a guy walks in with an original signature collection baseball mitt, he's confident he's done his research and knows what price to ask for. These items have been listed online for a whopping $1,000 each, so this customer was pretty certain he could make a small fortune on this item. Chumlee was quick to tell the customer the prices he's seen online are inaccurate and items never tend to sell for that much, even if they're listed so high. After a bit of haggling, the customer happily walks away with the glove for $425, which is a relatively good deal in fairness, but we're sure if Chum found the right customer, he could easily mark the price up on this item and make himself a healthy profit margin. Now that's how you play the game. 3. Dennis Rodman jerseys. A woman called Annie walks into the shop with a bag full of old Dennis Rodman jerseys, which is bizarre in itself, and Chumlee's attention is drawn instantly because how did she even manage to get them? Well, it turns out that the customer was actually once married to the baseball legend and wanted to sell them to help her fund her daughter's tuition. Since they had a signature and sentimental value to Annie, she was looking to get around $8,800 for them, and all the money was for a good cause, so she hoped she would appeal to Chum's softer side. Chum, of course, called in an expert who knows a thing or two about sports jerseys and valued the items at $6,500. Knowing he'd need to make a profit on the jerseys, Annie was talked into selling them for $4,300, which is fair enough. Chum has a business to run and he can't be making a living off of a loss. Sadly though, dear Annie departed with these sentimental shirts for much cheaper than she thought and will have to foot a bit more of her daughter's tuition bill. She could always give Dennis a call and ask for more. 2. Victorian saw handle pistols. When a couple of nickel-plated saw-handle pistols showed up at the shop, their owner was looking to take home around $8,000, given their age and the history behind them. Chum noticed the items weren't in great condition. They were rusty and damaged, probably from the lack of care from an old gunslinger or one too many duels. Yeehaw! Chum did as Chum does best and called in an expert in the gun field for their opinion due to the historic value. And it turns out the guns were made by Alexander Henry, the famous Victorian-era gun maker. After haggling back and forth, they eventually settled on $3,300, and Chum would be one happy bunny for this incredibly low sale. It turns out Chumlee's instincts were correct, as these pistols from the Western days eventually sold at auction for $42,000. That's a profit of $38,700. We don't suspect this customer will be returning to the Gold and Silver store anytime soon and is probably less than impressed with the deal he got from the Pawn Stars. This proves one thing, and that's always getting a second opinion before selling. He could have gotten 12 times more for the pistols if he had gone to auction himself. 1. Rick's 1600s Katana. There's one thing we know for certain about Pawn Star Rick Harrison, and that is that he loves himself a Japanese sword. Katanas, to be exact. He has a whole collection that he has acquired over the years and has even gone as far to send his swords all the way to Japan for repair. The rest of the Pawn Stars know very well that Rick's swords are not to be sold under any circumstances. That is until UFC head Dana White comes in looking for interior decorations, and Chumlee can't help but to disobey orders and attempts to sell one of Rick's personal 1600s era katanas. Chum wanted $40,000 for the invaluable 400-year-old sword, but eventually they settled on $30,000 on the condition he spent an additional $30,000 on a bunch of other weaponry too. Presumably, ones that didn't belong to Rick as well, otherwise Chum really was trying to ruffle a few feathers. Rick was angry though, absolutely raging would be the precise term. He storms out to chase down the customer, but upon realizing it was Dana White, he soon backed off. Perhaps he was starstruck, or perhaps he didn't want to go head-to-head with the boss of the craziest fighting championship in the world. Rick was pretty cool with Dana, but Chum, maybe not so much. He sold his 400-year-old katana, for heaven's sake. That's not what friends do, and it's almost as bad as when your colleagues eat your lunch. Not cool to scam your own friends and colleagues, Chum. So it's true that Chum isn't always the master of scamming. He does have valid business skills that help him identify what's going to make the business money, which at the heart of it is really what the Pawn Stars are there to do. But there are a few times that he pinches the pockets a little too much and the sellers are left with a not so great deal. As we say, always do your research before going up against these buying beasts, and maybe think about getting a second opinion. Go ahead and put your money on this vid by hitting that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to comment below some of your favorite Pawn Star items.